money is really the first line of defense for everything. We have to do whatever we can to make sure that every woman has some money to call her own. Women grew up thinking that they needed to choose between a career and family, and of course they chose family. Intent and belief is a starting point. हमारे generation में वो intent और belief भी नहीं था. Society, systems, governments, all of us, families, men, all of us have to work to make the system feel much fairer for women to sign up. There are these terms called time poverty, leisure poverty, which is what women are stricken by. You know, the driving factor is mothers who are telling their daughters ki naukri mat chhodna.
Welcome, Anuradha, on the set, and it's good to have you here after 5 years. We talked about women in education, and who knows better than you, running Vedica for such a long time. So I just want to, because we talked about the problems or the status of women and education that time. It's been years, and want to know what has changed. What do you feel has changed?
First of all, thank you for having me back. And it's great to be here, and it's so good that you all are carrying on this conversation, because I think we are living in a world which is just abuzz with the things that we want to see happen. You know, this is the 10th year for Vedica, and you were saying ki pata nahi ki have we not met 3, 4, 5, and I don't know how long it's been, because time really does fly. And if I look back at these 10 years, I think 2, 3 things really stand out for me. One, that we started out with a very simple idea. मुझे personally लगता था कि लड़कियां पढ़ती हैं और काम नहीं करती.
वो मीता को भी यही लगता
है ना, मुझे बहुत अखरता है. And अखरता इसलिए है because I have figured out, partly by observation and partly the hard way, that money is really the first line of defense for everything.
Agreed.
तो चाहे थोड़े हों चाहे ज़्यादा हों, लेकिन इनफ अपनी इज्जत को बरकरार रखने के लिए उतने पैसे हर इंसान के पास होने चाहिए. And I think for women, I feel personally, because they've had the raw end of the stick around money, we have to do whatever we can to make sure that every woman has some money to call her own. And that has to be enough money to keep her whole, to keep her like she feels she has her dignity intact. And that was the mission behind Vedica. Abhi kaise karte? The only way I know to make people financially independent is they have to work. And I think now increasingly people have inheritances, then you have to recognize that you have that money and you have to make it work for you. But taking away the discomfort of our relationship with money. You know, all of us have grown up in a time when we say, I don't care about money.
Or we don't want to talk about
money. We don't want to talk about money. It's not about the money. I think we have to bring up the younger generation to be more cognizant about the importance of money, the role that it can play in your life, how it can enable you, and some level of necessity. And then take it from there. The change that I see, you know, what keeps me excited coming to work every day is the change that I see. So what started out as this little experiment and us looking to equip women, educate and equip them to be able to stay in the workforce, Meeta, I think we've set off almost like a movement where what we have taught them has actually made them a certain kind of woman. So जो हमारे 1000 alums हैं अब बाहर, they are shaping a world that is the world that you and I would like to see manifest 10, 20, 30 years from now, which is, it has all the elements of what we would have wanted to have in our lives for growing ourselves. Up, but we definitely want it for our children and people thereafter.
But Anuradha, you said a very interesting thing, that women staying in the workforce, जब हम statistics देखते हैं बड़े dismal होते हैं. So then we get heartbroken क्योंकि इतना education कर रहे हैं, इतना reinforcement. Even companies are trying to say, okay, so much retention programs. So why are women still dropping off?
Sukirti, I think it's something that bothers all of us. But I think intent and belief is a starting point. हमारे generation में वो intent और belief भी नहीं था. Women grew up thinking that they needed to choose between a career and family, and of course they chose family. That was one. The second thing was that girls have been brought up over hundreds of years. जिन घरों में अलाउ या उसकी बात भी होती थी वहां पर ये होता था कि भाई अगर हाँ कि अगर आपको करना है तो आप काम कर सकते हो, right?
We allow you to.
That also after
Or-
shadi.
Or it's your choice, right? Boys were never brought up with that. For boys, it's a given that you have to have a job, and so they keep their jobs. Girls are brought up with the view कि अच्छा चलो ठीक लग रहा है तो कर लो, टाइम है तो कर लो, मन कर रहा है तो कर लो. But at the first sign of discomfort, at the first sign of trouble, at the first sign of having to make a difficult choice, you quit work because you had that option. So I think that's the second thing, that there isn't a belief that has, where girls have been brought up to believe that it is not optional any longer for you to not have your own money. You have to have your own money. And the reason I'm very hopeful, even though numbers look the way they do, Sukirti, is that Vedica, in the last 10 years, every year we interview so many girls to come into our program. You know, the driving factor is mothers who are telling their daughters ki naukri mat chhodna. I hadn't thought that in my lifetime, Indian mothers would be telling their daughters कि नौकरी करनी है और नौकरी मत छोड़ना. Everything else comes next.
Because it comes from their own pain point, no, and their own limitations.
So it's a huge shift. So I feel like that's the starting point, and I think we are sitting at that inflection point. I see only a small segment, but this segment is bigger than it used to be. So I think that change has to happen. So we'll start seeing it in the numbers because I think we've started to see it in the attitudes in a much bigger way.
But now we come back to एक और question आपने बहुत अच्छा बोला. This choice, family, career, children. That still that choice now is becoming. A lot of people have said, okay, ठीक है, career now, but I'll leave family and kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, this is a very favorite question for me at Vedica because हमारी लड़कियां जब, you know, they're sitting in an audience, the way they talk, people can sometimes get the impression that, you know, they're not interested in marriage or they're not interested in motherhood. I don't think that's the truth. I think the truth is that they are rejecting the current construct of marriage and motherhood, which means marriage at the cost of most other things, motherhood at the cost of most other things. And on that, Sukirti, the statistics are across the world. Girls are marrying late or not marrying at all. They're either having children very late or not having children at all. I mean, you can see what's happening to fertility rates. And society, systems, governments, all of us, families, men, all of us have to work to make the system feel much fairer for women to sign up to being married, having children, raising families again. So the statistics are very clear right now. And I don't think it's a great trend. But if we make it a binary choice, then today's young woman is saying, if I have to have only one thing, then I'd much rather have a life that feels independent and feels whatever. But I don't think, I mean, because I see these young women so closely, you know, the aspirations for a complete life which has all of these elements is very high. And we are teaching our young women that both are, I mean, forget about the young women. I come from a home like that. My mother's 85 today. I've grown up in a home where there was everything. She had a career, she had kids, she has a family, she could cook, she could stitch. Now, today they diss that term and saying, you know, please don't talk about super moms and super women. I'm not saying that. My mother in her generation was perfectly okay with saying, I can't be 100% of 7 things, but I can be 50-60% of 7 different things. So this distributed joy,
wholesome.
That the parts make up a much bigger whole than putting all your eggs in one basket. So I think there's, I mean, I'm very hopeful.
We're living in an age of skilling and upskilling. How do women keep up? Because sometimes ये भी लगता है कि इतना information अभी काम भी करो, then you need to constantly upskill yourself also, and then you also want to take care of the family. You know, so you feel that there's also a lot of load because especially now it's not just कि अच्छा you've graduated, You have to keep upskilling yourself.
See, there was, I mean, these are quite well-known concepts, but there is this whole, there are these terms called time poverty, leisure poverty, which is what women are stricken by, right? You don't have time. And you
never
definitely
have.
don't have time for leisure. And again, just this morning we were talking that women who are in the professional space, okay, successful, whatever, if you are choosing between an important professional commitment and a casual personal commitment, you will easily pick your professional commitment. The same person, if you have a critical personal commitment and you have a casual professional commitment, you will pick the personal. If you have two critical, what will you pick? I think, yeah, very tough, but I think there is a cadre of women today who have the commitment to, on occasions, say both are critical. I'm going to find a way to manage, and it could be for either. That they are not saying Sawali nahi uthta, of course I'm going to go personal. The biggest challenge is casual personal and casual professional. No woman will pick the casual professional, right? Because in our hierarchy of
they
responses,
don't want to go to networking events,
exactly,
these type of things.
You
These
know,
are all casual.
These are all casual, right? Now they feed into the way you become, how your networks grow, or the fact that your work is an integral part of your life. So I feel like the next step is for women to say, you know what, I need to make time, or I'd like to make time every now and then for something that's casual professional. And I think that's going to be a very strong indicator of how women treat their lives at work or just as individuals. So to come to your point, upskilling, if it is essential for your job, then I think it will become a part of your work life. But I think the answer, Sukirti, is much more fundamental, because if we don't address the care economy, we live in a world, and you all know these statistics, that women do for every hour of work or time that a man spends on domestic life, women spend 9.8 hours in India. The global average is 3.5 or 3.3%, 3.3 hours, right?
Beyond working
hours. If you're doing 9.8, so where are you going to take
work?
where are you going to take time out of, right? So I feel like the structural shift that we all have to achieve very consciously is for the care economy and the domestic world to become more equally shared. And unless that happens,
that seems
very
far away.
I know that every time I'm sitting with my peers, I get this reaction, but you know what? I spend my whole day with 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds.
But younger, yeah.
Oh my God, they are such a breath of fresh air, because they are not thinking like this.
They're clear.
They are so clear about, and I'm not saying that they don't have challenges and that they won't have some of these questions as they grow older and start facing some of the societal questions and things like that. But I think they are quite clear, and they are much better prepared for the trade-offs than our generation was.
Anuradha, you were telling us a great story that jo leadership mein hai, especially now. Because, I mean, a lot of these companies have been incredibly successful. They're doing incredibly well. And actually, they don't have diversity in them. So they also ask this question, na, कि हमें diversity क्यों चाहिए, हमें women leadership में क्यों चाहिए, हमारी growth भी तो इतनी अच्छी हो रही है. Tell me, what are you going to tell me the ROI on the woman?
You've touched a
Rona.
very like, I'm intrigued by that, Rona. So I'm not going to take names, but if you look at the top 10 conglomerates in India, rich, growing fast, lead the way, very few women.
Men dominated.
Very few women, and some of the absolute biggest, fastest growing, richest companies actually have abysmal percentages of women across the company, and in leadership positions, almost non-existent. So one such company, I was asked to, somebody told me, come and talk, about diversity. I said, what am I going to say? And just as an aside, I mean, as a serious view, I do believe that trying to convert everything into a business case can have these trends fall on flat on their face. I've been doing some research. If you look at the trailblazers, whether it was for climate change, whether it's for diversity, whether it's for any other good thing, CSR, it came from established, reputed, credible people who did something because they believed it was the right thing to do. When you do the right thing and then you discover that it was actually definitely not detrimental, it was better for business or it was good for business, and in any event is not detrimental for business, then it starts catching on. So even for diversity, it has to be people who believe that half the population is women. How can you have 2%, 5% in your
But the products
company
are
or
also
in,
for them.
in the workplace or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So people have to, so I told this person that I can't come and make a case for ROI from a business angle because I'm already amongst the richest. What am I going to consider? But I did go, and this was to a bunch of their top leaders. As expected, there were only men in the room.
But only men in the room.
Only men in the room. And I said to them that, you guys have done such a fantastic job for your company, you've made India proud, etc. What did it take? And I know that you have a more than 5-day working week and things like this, long hours, we've all been working really hard. So, of course, I said, well done and thank you on behalf of India. But tell me, do any of you have any other responsibility? Anything? So there was a little bit of silence in the room. Then somebody said, aging parents, somebody said autistic child, somebody said, young children, blah, blah. So I said, how does that get taken care of?
The wife.
The only reason it gets taken care of is that there is a woman in your ecosystem who has said, I will take charge and do this on your behalf and on our family's behalf so that you can go to work. And I told these gentlemen that the good news in my view, and perhaps the not so good news for many other people who are status quoists, is that women are no longer waiting for permission to give up some part of that responsibility. They are really walking away from this unconditional caregiving. So society is staring at a huge problem, because if women aren't going to be the caregivers on behalf of everybody, then men will have to step in. So I told these people that, if they are walking away, and I said, slightly lightheartedly, but women's only travel groups are like the biggest indicator of what's going on, right? They are thriving.
Yeah.
So, and it's not only single women with no responsibilities who are on these groups. There are mothers, grandmothers, sisters, aunts, all of that on these groups. So I said, if they vacate the space, then you'll have to fill some of that. And the space that gets created in your companies will then have to be taken by these
women,
us half, who are now giving up some of our caregiving. So I think and I refer to this movement as the patient tsunami. I think women are a part of a patient tsunami, which is dheere, 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 dheere unleashing and making way for itself.
When we were talking about men making the money and the women doing the caregiving, sometimes is it a limitation on women because they feel that the money comes from there? The equation is like,
of course, वो फिर आ गया उसी पे कि अगर अपने पैसे नहीं है तो you have to fall into that mold. But, and again, this is, I hope some policymakers are watching this, because I keep saying this in, in Vedica conversations and things like that, a country that has mastered TDS, we cannot make a single payment without deducting TDS.
Yes.
Now, if our tax system has managed to do that, I'm sure they can find a way in which the caregiver
should be paid
in a domestic unit is compensated. Figure it out.
We exactly before this session we were talking about that there should be Aadhaar card kind of a system where that every woman gets paid for her care
or what you do, yeah.
And it should be
and
it should be certified and verified, and
Supreme Court gives some
husband ko tax benefit de do na when
whatever you do. Yeah. But I feel like if money gets divided and caregiving gets compensated, already a lot of the skew that we see in society will
unsafe. Men will be insecure.
I mean, I feel like firstly, that's not my job to solve. है ना? All of us have to, we were also insecure about so many things, हम धीरे धीरे सीख रहे हैं.
So that's why
Getting
they
a
will not
little more
allow it to
confident.
happen.
No, but they will also get it because I'm like the patient tsunami is not asking for permission. Patient tsunami is happening, you have to respond to it. And you can manage or shape that tsunami if you start correcting for the things that it is coming up against.
No, but something that you speak about, which is very important here, this disagreement versus disobedience. Because a lot of times when we think that we are disagreeing with somebody, or even in a case like this, people say, "Nahi, tum matlab hamari baat kyun nahi sun rahe ho?"
Because you're dependent on me. You know, this is, by the way, it takes me back. So, because we've had 10 years of Vedica, we now think that there are some themes which are very common across women. And if you could address those issues, I think we will just enable women to be much more of themselves and be able to then navigate structural challenges, their own dreams, ambitions, things that come in their way without being destructive. Like, what's a good way in which, how can this be a positive shift, right? Because none of us want destruction. We don't want to destroy one thing to create another thing that needs destruction. So we have to move towards something that works for both.
Absolutely.
And at Vedica, we very, very fundamentally believe that whatever change you make, I feel that if women take up more of the providing responsibility, many men will find it much easier to cope with phases in their lives when it's hard for them to be the main provider, but they don't have options. Like, share the load is in every sphere.
Yeah.
My heart breaks for when I see the kind of pressure men are under when they feel they're not being
Nobody
able to
talks about it.
Yeah, being able to provide in the manner that they, in their own heads, expect to deliver, exactly like we are burdened by our own expectations of ourselves in terms of us as a part of a domestic unit. For them, it's the same things professionally. How much money, what kind of success, what assets, all of those kinds of things. So the world we are creating needs to serve both people better. So we've come up with a whole bunch, and it's going to be a part of the book that we're writing, which I hope you will all read. But one of the biggest things we found is, I think it's true of both boys and girls, but then men outgrow that often, not always, but often. Women take much longer. And we are brought up to, harmony, being nice, the good girl syndrome,
deeply
respectful,
rooted.
all of that. And we don't want to respect people, especially in the early days when it's your parents. You don't want to disappoint and disrespect your parents. Now, I feel more so in India than other places, but again, I think it's common in large parts of the world, that disagreement and disrespect get confused. So young women find it very hard to disagree
because
with
culturally
older
it's taken as
or senior people because they confuse it with disrespect. There's a very large part in our course where we are helping women understand that you can disagree respectfully. So you want to work, or you want to marry someone of your own choice, or you don't want to marry, or you want to go to a different city, or you want to study. There is a way to be able to express your ambitions.
There's certain things that we just should not just say, "Acha, theek hai, jaane do."
Jane.
And I think you tell it very well.
Yeah.
कि कौन सी चीज़ें हैं जो हम देखें, जो हमें कहनी चाहिए when we see that either a woman is being snubbed, or other things we just say, "Chalo, let it go." What are some of those things that you have seen typically that even women don't stand up for other
so
women?
like this disagree is not the same as disrespect. One of the other things that we talk about, which is very important for progress and change, is calling out stereotypes. Things that are not true for us but have just got built up. So I remember one of our conversations was saying that I may not be able to change the world. I can definitely change myself, my responses, and at least share that option or that way of being with people around me. So very often on panels, somebody will say, but Everyone talks about more women leaders, but you know what? Women leaders are the worst for young
Other-
women, and women don't help other women. I have never let that comment pass. Say, I'm sorry, I don't know about the rest of the world, but it has never been true for me. No woman has, been not helpful to me because of as a woman. I would like to believe that I've not been that person, and we have to call out that myth right here. And like that, there are many other things. It could be about women being this, like the emotion thing. So I will often tell people that when men raise their voices, it's not coming in the way of their performance, because it's over the years, it's their conditioned response to many things.
Yeah.
It's just, I said, for me, tears are like that. Just because there are tears down my face doesn't mean I'm not functional. I'm fully functional. But when there are 10 women and 10 men in a room, both will get normalized. As opposed to us having to work super hard to dumb down or to eliminate things that, just because of conditioning, are more natural to us.
It works for the society, that if you create some pre-notion thing that women will not allow women to grow, women are weak, it serves the society, because
I mean, Meeta, I'm not cynical. I really believe like there is much more goodness in the world.
No, I agree.
Than the desire to keep things not good. And so I feel like if people knew that there was, I think what happens is people are like this when they look at a constrained pie. Bas itna hi hai, ab isme the fight is between either you win or I win. That's not our world. There are so many occasions where both people are better off. And that's why I feel like at least the way we are thinking about feminism, the way we are thinking about patriarchy, the way we are thinking, at least at Vedica, about women's progress, is actually progress for both. It's not going to be at the cost of, because, I'll give you one example. Because when patriarchal stereotypes are going against men, there are many men today who want to be a primary parent.
Yeah.
They're not allowed it. And by the way, many young mothers are to blame because they don't allow boys to parent like they will parent. Your way is the right way, their way is not the right way. Divorce cases, awful example, but custody for so many deserving boys or fathers, it's just a given that custody will go to the mother, and you could be a not so great mother. But there was no space in society for these conversations. I think we are making place for all of those things.
Not true.
That it's not the most natural thing for every woman to be a mother. I'll tell you something. So I was married for a long time. I got divorced, 16, 17 years after being married. I'm considered, reasonably successful. I live on my own. I have 2 cats. I don't have children. Very often at a Vedica orientation, when I'm trying to talk about stereotypes, I tell them, I say, listen, if somebody told you, there's this woman, she's 50 years old, doesn't have kids, she's divorced, she has 2 cats, lives on her own, she's very successful. What is the picture in your head? It's of an awful, self-centered, a word that we shouldn't use.
But where did it come from? Exactly, that
But
makes me
I'm
think.
not that person.
Yeah.
I think of myself as a generous, warm, caring, nurture, and that's the feedback I get. It's not like I'm saying it and it's not true. So stereotypes are really harmful.
True.
Because the belief is that if you're not these things, then you can't be those
Yes,
other things.
yeah.
There are so many different ways to be nurturing, to be kind, to be, warm, and all of that. So I think giving people the space to talk about things that we weren't allowed to talk about in the past.
And I think nobody
It's very
stopped to
important.
think also that by speaking like this or by creating that narration, there is a patriarchal or there is a non.
We perpetuate a way of being, and
which
it's very
is-
hard to exit.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to one of the things, which is the most difficult conversation, which you were talking about financial independence, but women just have a problem talking about money. managing money, wanting to even discuss money. How do you change that? Because if one takeaway that make it a normal, that people don't want to talk about money.
Yeah, again, we are talking about our generation.
Does the next generation
we
talk
are.
about
I mean,
it?
I have gotten better at it, Sukirti, and I'll tell you why. And I have to give credit to Monica Halan,
Monica.
who
She's
talks
a-
about personal finance and money and
Yeah.
all that. She told me, third year of Vedica, she says, Anuradha, if you don't get your finances in order, मैं तुम्हारा भांडा फोड़ दूंगी, because you talk to everybody, all these young women about personal finance and financial independence. Hello, what's your story? But it's true. I was married to a banker. I grew up. There was no more room in my growing up years about not being financially independent. But somebody like me who came from that background, financial independence meant I don't ask other people for money.
Oh, yeah.
But did I think I should provide for children, provide for a spouse, provide
Manage
for
my money.
parents, buy a house? No. That wasn't a part of my ambition or responsibility. Equal money spent on my brother and me, but the money spent on his education will produce many times the returns that will on mine, because that's the way I thought. Now, you know, there's a universe that looked out and watched out for me, and I landed up, you know, putting money in places which actually did very well for me, but it didn't come from an intention. It's hindsight for me to realize, and if I had been mindful, I could have been in a very different place. In a very good place, but I could have been in a very different place. So I think it comes from that. The first thing is to recognize, and that's why Sukirti, we are now moving back, saying, I don't want to start this conversation with a 25-year-old. This conversation should start with a 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 18-year-old, 22-year-old. The sooner you start, the better it is, and with 50-year-olds. Right? So for me, it happened at 45. That, buddy, I've worked all my life, and hello, like I never thought that it should make money for me.
Like my money should make money. No?
That I should work, and money should be a part of the equation. It doesn't have to be the defining factor.
Yeah, but
If it doesn't have to be, but it should be important.
But your relationship with money.
With money is really the question. Now, the moment that starts to change, and again,
And
for
thankfully,
us,
you were blessed, or you were lucky that you had enough. But what if you didn't have enough?
but what is enough? What is enough?
Very true.
So many women will come and tell me, you know, like they stay in trapped situations.
Yeah.
They're financially dependent, but they're dependent because they want a home in a certain place,
Yeah.
a life of a certain kind, and that they're not willing to give that up for dignity or for independence. There's hundreds
They're
of women
making
who
that
can go and
trade-off.
get jobs of a certain kind just to be independent, but they don't want that trade-off because that life came
That life
it
comes
comes
with a lot
with
of,
with its trappings.
but nothing comes for free.
Nothing else. So you have to make that choice. And I will say something which has been one of my tougher realizations, that to me, it was hard to imagine that to some other people, dignity is not as important as it is to me.
That's a very interesting.
You know, I have had to accept that my top priority doesn't have to be everybody else's top priority. So if you'd rather be financially secure and safe, and you're okay with some indignity, that, unfortunately, I mean, while I would like to differ, but I have to accept that for many human beings,
That's how they.
that may not be their most important need. But we have to find a way for women and other people for whom dignity is important. And if dignity is important, then I'd like to be able to share with them how you can live a life of dignity. And for that, financial independence is absolutely central. You accept that, your relationship with money changes.
And teaching
And-
them at a very young age is where you're saying.
But I'm saying it's never too late to learn. मैं 45 पे सीखी कि
But why don't they start this in schools?
because their mothers have to also believe that now. So I think it's starting to happen, and that's why I'm saying that when you go into a room of 25-year-olds today, and you know this new batch at Vedica, I went into the classroom with them, you know, on day 2 or 3, and I said, if all of you could change one thing in the world, as you look at it as a young woman, what would you want to change? There was a range of things, but like one young woman said, I wish parents had an education fund instead of a marriage fund.
Yes.
Absolutely.
One girl said, I want equal rights to look after my parents. And it should be an expectation that my parents have of me. It's a duty and a responsibility that I would like to exercise. This belief that boys look after their parents financially and girls don't have to contribute, they would like that to change. These are girls who are 24, 25 today, and they're coming from all across India, Sukirti. They are not urban educated women with, exposure. This is a inner spirit. And what I'm super excited by is that every day for all of us who've started to think like that, there is reinforcement coming from ads, from books,
Yes.
from films,
From people
from
around us.
podcasts, from stories, from the women's cricket team. There is a reinforcement that's coming every day to say, keep going.
Now, if you had to say 2, 3 things, what is it? Because you give so many speeches at the beginning and at the end.
I feel like because it's so many centuries of conditioning, women are not a homogeneous commodity. You can't just say women should think like this. I feel like the one really big ask I have of every woman as a starting point is you have to verbalize and believe in equality. I think wanting equality versus believing in equality are two quite different things. So we have to believe it, and that's the starting point. How it manifests, I'm willing to allow different timelines for.
But first, let's get
Right?
to the belief.
But we have to do it in our homes. We have to check ourselves. Chimamanda Adichie, who is one of our favorites at Vedica, she said the number of women who say thank you to their husband for changing the baby's diaper, ye kya hai yaar? But it's true, we do it all the time. Because we are starting from the belief that this is my responsibility. Now someone is sharing it. The moment it changes to both people's responsibility. And I'm talking to the both of you like I live that life. I don't. I'm teaching myself every day, as are the both of you.
Absolutely.
Right? That you check yourself, say, oh, there I go again. Right? And
There
then
I
you
go
pull back.
stereotyping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Calling out.
like one day in office, I was going up the stairs, there's a big window, and I could see one of my young colleagues going out, a young woman colleague going out with all the boys, and this girl was much younger. I mean, she was 22 or something, and I thought I would embarrass her because I would like everyone to be mindful of how much they smoke. So I thought she'd get embarrassed, and I just called her. I could see her niche, and I called her and I said, hello, where are you? I thought she would jump and say, I've just come out for a walk, I'll come back. But she said, I'm just out for a smoke. And I was like, the stereotype was in my head. Saying like, why would I have expected her to hide it or,
Not talk about it.
Yeah. So I feel like we have to, we have to
also
live
role model
and
and
believe
learn
and acknowledge that equality every day.
Do you think enough is being done? Or I'm not saying things are not being done, but what more can be done?
I mean, if you are asking me
If you
from
had a
an
magic
ideas
wand,
perspective, I feel like if these beliefs changed or became real, I think the change would be much faster and we would have a real tsunami. I think these beliefs change only over time. And so, and that's why it takes longer.
What would be your message to audience if you have to sum up the whole session? And
No, I said it earlier. I said one, I think you can start anywhere. Start talking about feeling equal, genuinely feel and believe you're equal. But sometimes people say, oh, it's, they're saying it for a checkbox. I don't care. Just say it. Because when you say it, it's a starting point. So I think that really, the second thing is calling it out.
Yes.
Wherever we can make a change. And I feel the third thing I will say as a message is that let's all be much more aware of how patriarchy is difficult, both for men and women. And if we make equal steps to make it better for both, I think we have a winning formula.
absolutely, so well said. Thank you for being here. And I love Patient Tsunami because this gives us hope.